Hello and good evening and welcome to Right on the Money, where we want you to be right with the money. God, we work hard for our money, and God wants us to not let money dominate us or dominate our thought process, but God wants what? He wants us to dominate the money life. He wants us to be able to use it to further the kingdom, to further our lives. He has, not to be worrying from here and there about different things. And we talked a lot of different things in this class. And today, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter class. But I've been asked a question by various people. What do you think about these cash apps? Cash App in particular, Zelle, Venmo. Those are three of the most popular ones, and because we live in a society of convenience, right? It says in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20, it says this: there is a desirable treasure. Yeah, we have that, right? And an oil in the dwelling of the wise. That represents wealth. But a foolish man squanders it. We don't want to squander what we've worked hard to get. And there's a lot of people out there trying to take advantage of that and doing things with that. And people ask me, is these apps are they foolish? Are they good? Can I trust them? Here's the deal. When it comes to anything you use your money for, you gotta be careful with it. Okay, you just can't take anybody just at their word. You want to make sure you understand where things are going. I tell you all the time, make sure every dollar has a name, so you know where it's going to. These apps, I'm just going to talk about these three different apps tonight. I personally, I don't use any of them. I'm a little old fashioned. In some areas, I like to, now I pay things online, things like that, but I always use my credit card. I tell you for many reasons. Number one, if someone gets a hold of your credit card information, all you have to do is challenge it, and the credit card company sides with you probably 99.9% of the time, and you don't have to pay for that thing. Great protection, wonderful protection out there. And you don't have to do a whole lot of proof out there. So many times I've done it. Actually, last month I had a thing where I signed up for a subscription for my daughter to help her with her math class. It was over. I canceled it. They sent me an email to cancel on a certain day, so I canceled on a certain day, and then they hadn't charged for another month. I just sent them my credit card and say, "Hey, I don't want to pay this 19.99. This is what I said. I canceled. I didn't have to send any proof in at all, and I was protected. So I believe in doing that. Uh, it, it- people like these Zelles and Venmos and Cash Apps because a lot of people we deal with have them. They're convenient. Yeah, they're convenient on social media and social networks and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with convenience as long as you stay on top of them. They're all three of them. They're pros as they're free, they're fast, they're convenient. These are words that they use from different sites, people who have reviewed them and all that. For most of them, there's no fees. Now, if you use a credit card attached to one of these accounts, there's going to be a fee because the credit card wants to make money. When now I buy something online with my credit card, I don't pay a fee for that. But if you want to go use your credit card through one of these apps to then purchase something, then you're going to pay a fee. Now, some people they do that and they attach it to their credit card because then they can get like cash out of their credit card to pay for something. I think they're paying in cash, and you're not. You're actually going to pay. Now, I think most of them is just 3%, which is like cheap. But still, 3% you didn't need to pay in the first place because if you just used the credit card, you wouldn't have a fee in the first place. So if you're going to use these, make sure they are actual cash for cash type of things. You don't want to add other things into that going into there. Now, with that being said, I'm not a big believer. They're kind of like a debit card. I'm not a big believer in debit cards because the money comes out of your bank account, and once it does, it's hard to get in. And that's where all three of these Venmo, Zelle, and Cash App all have the same warning. Gotta be careful about fraud. When you use these things, you need to make sure and all three of them have on their sites talking about make sure you're using a trusted partner you're with, someone a company you've purchased from before. Things like that for these apps because these things come right out of your bank account, and there's a lot of fraud on. There's a lot of scams out there. People are trying to scam you and do different things. Actually, I want to read Venmo talks about a scam. For example, imagine you get a $500 Venmo payment from someone you don't know. They contact you and say, well, it was a mistake. I didn't mean to send you that $500 and ask you to send it back. The scammer often does this with stolen credit cards, is what Venmo says. This is from Venmo. And when the real cardholder reports the payment as fraud, Venmo takes the $500 from your account. And if you've already sent them $500 back, now you've just lost $1,000 that come out of your account. And there's no fraud protection built into any of these three apps: Cash App, Venmo, Zelle. Actually, all there's more apps coming up daily. None of them have built-in fraud protection. Basically, user beware. So it is convenient, but it's very important that they're very popular as scammers because they know that there's no fraud protection. Cash App might be the most popular one. People use a lot of that, especially in the social media realm and things like that. And that's and like I said, it's like a debit card to a certain extent. But what you got to understand is the money in your account in Cash App is not FDIC insured. When you go to a bank, you always want to go to a bank that has FDIC insurance. That means if the bank gets robbed or something happens, you are insured by the federal government up to $250,000. Okay, that's a great thing to happen. Your money in these accounts is not insured by the federal government. So if you are using that as your bank, that's what that I think that's where the rub comes. People are starting to begin to use these as their bank. If your money gets taken, you don't have a whole lot of recourse going into them. Now, does it happen on a large scale? Now, for the most part, Cash App, Zelle, and Venmo do a good job of trying to police their apps. Of course, they're going to. Why? Because they make money every time you use it. I mean, they're not out there just to do something for free. They have employees, so they are motivated to keep your money safe. But the hackers are out there, and none of them have fraud protection. That's why when I buy something online, I use my credit card because I know I have 100% fraud protection. That's it's the federal law. I know that. Okay, but sometimes it's just easy to do that. Now, here's the other thing. Now with some of them, another thing you can't do on a lot of them is say you make a purchase, and once it's verified on most purchases, there are some exceptions. You can't cancel a payment. Now that's interesting because, like on a credit card, I say, "Oh no, I'm going to go. I'm going to call. I'm going to cancel that." Even with the bank account, if you send a check, you can send a non-payment, stop payment order, and stop that from going through. I've had to do that before, and in order to protect my finances, after I've actually had to help others in the church who've come to me and they've done something, they realized it was a scam, and we're able to use the stop payment order to stop that from going out of their bank account. That option is not in most of these apps. There are sometimes some certain transactions do so, but for the most part, once you make a transaction, it's there, and then you have to fight to get the money back. And for most of what I read, if you make a bad transaction, it's pretty much a bad transaction, and you kind of got to eat it. And today you see a lot of what do you call it? Not municipal court. What's it called? I'm brains. It's like the people's court. What's it called? Small claims court. There you go. You see a lot of things going for the magistrates in these apps, because that's pretty much the only recourse. Now the problem with that is you have to prove it, and if you win, but you got to file a court. You got to file a fee to present the case. Now, if you win, you get your fees back and all that. But depending on who you're suing and all those type of things, it's difficult. Now, like I said, once again, Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, they're doing a good job of policing their apps. I can say that. I'm not saying you can't trust them at all. I'm saying they do a good job. They don't want unsatisfied customers because then they won't make any money. But there are people out there who aren't real savvy with their money and don't really pay attention to it. If you're going to use these, you really got to pay attention where the money comes from. You want some, and if you link it to a credit card, you got to realize they're going to charge you a fee if you use money out of the credit card. Now you could get a double whammy if you use your credit card to pay something, and then the credit card uses it out of your cash advance side. Remember, cash advances, they're not that you start paying interest right away. And that's you pay interest to the credit card and to the Cash App or the Zelle or the Venmo companies. You got to be careful about those, about who you send those to. Now, also another thing you have to understand is, like with Venmo in particular, the payments are public. by default, which means anybody who has can see what you're doing. You can't keep your history as private as you'd like it to be. Now, for some people, they could care less about that. There are some people, they want to make sure everything is private. They want to make sure that their transactions are just between them and the person they're going through. Not so much with the apps. It's not now. Zelle and Cash App are better at it. Venmo's right up front tell you that they're public by default. Okay, so you got to understand with that. And that's a very important thing to understand. And then the other thing is with these and is with especially with Cash App and with Zelle, there are some spending limits. You can only spend so much with it. Now that's really good in some instances, especially for people that spend a lot of money and want to curb their spending habits. That's good. And which one was the here? Must be this one over here. Um, yeah, you can only spend up to by default. Cash App has low send and receive limits. You can only send and receive up to $1,000 within a 30-day period. That's pretty low in today's economy. Now, users who identify their birth date and social security numbers through the app can increase these limits. But also, when you start putting that information out there, it's out there. Once again, these companies do a good job of protecting your information, but no one's 100% great at protecting your information. So it's very careful with that. And remember, the Cash Apps and the Venmos and the Zelles of the world, they're linked to your bank account, or they become your bank account and you put money into them. The problem is it's cash. And once it leaves, it's hard to get back. And so you got to be careful how much information you put out there. Now you say you enter a credit card, you enter information. You enter the credit card information. You don't typically when you buy something with a credit card have to give them your social security number. You don't have to give them your birthday. You don't have to give them where you live. You just give them typically a credit card transaction is you will give the number, the expiration date, and the security code for the card. And sometimes you might have to give a zip code just for fraud protection that you actually live in that zip code, but not your full address, not your social security card information. So that's just in this great now with credit cards buying stuff. Now you want to send money to a friend, that's great. These are designed basically for people to people transfers. Sometimes we got to do that. But with that, sometimes that can get abused and things like that. So you got to be careful with that. And also when you're trying to help someone out, it's great. I need $1,000. You Venmo it to me, Zelle it to me, Cash App it to me. Here's the thing: how do you know if that person is actually using the money or what they said they were using it for? When someone needs help, what I like to do is actually, what do you need help with? Great. Let me pay that bill for you. Let me send the money right to that company for you. Because what happens, they get the money and they already have bad spending habits. They might not actually pay that bill in the first place. We want to be able to help them out. So be careful how you do it. A lot of people, what you do with the money I spent you? Well, if you do it for them, then you don't have that question going forward. And once and here's the other thing: don't not ever use these apps for someone you don't know or don't trust because you have no idea what they have behind the scenes or how they could do things. Scammers love these things; they love to attack them and do that. Now, I've said this probably 3 times, maybe 4. I'm gonna say it again: Venmo, Zelle, and Cash App are very aggressive at protecting you. They want you as a customer. So, can you use these apps and feel confident? Yes. Just like anything, though, something could go wrong. Like I gave you the example from Venmo. I also don't like the fact that if you want to have higher limits, you got to give out more personal information. I get that to a certain extent, but you don't have to do that with a credit card payment online. You don't have to do things like that. So, and I know we're becoming more social society, less cashless society. I get all that. I understand that. But I'm above all, I want to protect my money. And you always have fraud protection with the credit cards. And that's if there's one negative I could find about all the companies here is they're not FDIC insured and they don't have good fraud protection. And in actually most cases, they're upfront and they tell you there's no fraud protection. You need to be careful about it. And once the money leaves, almost in all circumstances, you cannot cancel that transaction. And that's where a bank's a little bit better than one of these apps if it's your bank, because if you write a check or you make a payment that way, there are other remedies like a stop payment order, things like that. Now there's some hoops you got to go through, but there's still some remedies for a transaction you didn't want to make or you thought it was fraudulent or illegal. There are some more remedies that way for traditional bank. Now one day they might change their tune on that and become more diligent with that. But right now they don't need to do that because, like I said, they're doing a good job. You're still relatively new. The Cash App, Venmo thing. These are all, they're less than a decade old. Okay, and the thing is they get old, just like banks. People learned how to break into them. They're gonna do that. But right now, it's relatively safe. I personally just not my personal cup of tea with those different apps. I have had tried to use them and with people and things like that, and there's nothing wrong. They're not evil. They're not bad. But just like anything, when something becomes really too convenient, you could find yourself in the cookie jar a little too often, or spending more money you want to spend. That'd be the other hang up you have. It gets real easy to send money. If money is real easy to send, it's real easy to leave your possession. And once it leaves your possession, it's like, wow, where'd the money go? I think of it, if it takes a little harder to leave your possession, you think about it more, right? If you can just gone, you're not thinking about it much. If anything, I can tell you, if you want to keep control of your money, keep control of your brain, your mind, and make sure you're thinking about what you're doing, thinking about where every dollar goes. And that would be, I guess, my biggest hang up with people that use the apps. I think sometimes they don't think enough when they're using it. Oh, it's there. I got money in the account. Boom. But you're not thinking about a budget. You're not thinking about what the money can be used for in the future. You're not thinking on those lines. So I just want to. So bottom line today was a question I had given me about these apps. Bottom line, I'll sum up. Hey, if you're diligent, you pay attention. Hey, they're great. They're convenient. Hey, you can even do messages with some of them and little emojis with some of them because we're in a social world. Hey, nothing wrong with it. But remember three things. Okay, first of all, none of them have built-in fraud protection. None of them are FDIC insured. So beware of that, and know that if someone tries to scam you and ask for their money back, and you don't know them, don't you dare give. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got it. No, keep it. Because here's the thing, they'll have to do it through their process, and like with Venmo, if end up convincing Venmo that it went to the wrong place, they're going to take the money to your account. So if you give them the money back, and then they get it again, they just scammed you for an extra for double of what they gave you. Don't allow that to happen. Okay, so you got to be careful. Make sure you only use it with people you know, companies that you trust. I make suggestion that the first time you purchase from a company, I sure wouldn't use an app. Okay, if they ask, and they also in order to get bigger spending limits, you got to give out more of your personal information. I, depends on how you feel about that. Some people are fine with that. Some people not so much. But that's a personal choice on your end. And then the only other last thing is, hey, when it's real easy to send money from point A to point B to point C to point D, it's a lot harder to keep track of money when it goes from A to B to C to D. And the idea is you want to have a good financial head. You want to have a good financial thing going on. You want to have good record keeping. When it comes to this, you got to look at it. Yeah, they have a list of the transactions. You can look at it. But here's the deal: they can have a list of the transactions on the app, but if you never look at them, you never record them into your own ledger and your own accounts and say, where am I spending my money? Who cares that it's all on a screen and you can look up anytime if you're not actually paying attention to where the money's going? The easier it is for money to leave the hand, the easier it is for it to get out of control. But if you can keep a good head, it is fast, it is convenient, it is popular. There are pretty much no fees unless you attach it to a credit card. Just don't do that. Just pay if you're going to pay with a credit card, just pay with a credit card. You don't have to pay any fees. Okay, just do that. Okay, but there's nothing evil or wrong with them. Feel free to use them. just make sure that you are diligent with it, because when it becomes too easy, we get a little lax in our diligence. And how do you stay right on the money? You don't become foolish, like our verse Proverbs 21:20 says. Fool is a person who doesn't know what's happening, who doesn't pay attention to their surroundings. When you use the apps, just be very attentive to where the money goes. So if something does come up fraudulent or somebody does try to scam you, you'll recognize it right away. Because the last thing you want to do is take your hard-earned money and put it in someone else's pocket with no recourse. And so yeah, feel free to use Venmo, Zelle, Cash App. If you do international things, there's one called Zoom, XOOM, um, and there's nothing wrong with them as long as you're diligent with them. But when, like I said, when something becomes a little too easy, that's when our diligence begins to wane, and then we wonder, where did the money go? You never want to have to ask yourself, where did the money go? You want to know where the money goes, so you can stay right on the money and not get yourself in trouble or anything like that. So, so I hope that answered your question about the apps. If you have any questions about the apps, I'd be happy to research and do some more research into it. But the bottom line is, they're okay to use as long as you're diligent with it and you're not foolish. And you know the risks going in, that where it comes from, and fraud is out there, but all these companies do a good job of protecting you, but still can happen. And it's always harder to get the money back from a cash thing than it is from a credit card or another safe form of payment in that type of way. But yeah, otherwise, it's the way of the world where it's going. As long as we keep our heads about ourselves, we'll stay right on the money. So until next month, remember, as always, Jesus loves you, I love you, and you're absolutely awesome.